Welcome, coaches. Welcome back to Bigs Rule the World. I'm excited. You all haven't had a break from me, but I've had a break from doing videos for a while. I went on vacation last week, and now I got my Wing T series done. I got my, why offensive line coaches should be, why offensive coordinators should be offensive line coaches done, and I got my 5 tips for you on for offensive line coaches during COVID-19 done. I did all that before vacation, and then I was like, okay, all set up on YouTube. Took a break. Gone, enjoyed the time with my son, enjoyed the time with my family, and was able to enjoy vacation. But I'm back. I'm excited about football. Down here in Virginia, we had our first day of workouts tonight. I'm excited to be back, man. I'm ready for football to get started. I have no idea what the season might look like. I have no idea if we're in the fall or in the spring. But I'm hoping to keep giving you content and giving you great stuff. I'm going to tell you right now, we're pushing to get to 100 subscribers. If we can get to 100 subscribers, I'm going to have a really big announcement. Once we hit that, we are at 80 at the making of this video, and I want to hit 100, so I hope you all can help me. Share this video with any offensive line coaches or any just football coaches in your life. Now, what are we talking about right now? What are we talking about in this video? We are talking about swag. For offensive line coaches, that sounds really, really stupid, doesn't it? The old school mentality when it came to offensive line play, when it came to really football, I think, was this swag stuff. What is swag? Okay. What is being cool? I wanted to make this. Originally, I thought about making this video titled Making Offensive Line Fun Again, Making Offensive Line Cool Again, Making Offensive Line Great Again. All 3 of those titles, I think, miss sort of a factor that we want to go for. And plus, as an offensive line coach, I'm going to be honest. I'm not here to make it fun. I'm not here to make it cool. But I can do it with a little bit of swag that gets me the fun and the cool. Okay, so we got a 3-part video series I'm excited about with bringing swag to the offensive line, bringing swagger to the offensive line. Swagger is probably a tougher word for me than swag. When I think of swag, I'm thinking about, just like the song says, my hat, my bag match, I got the look going on. A little swagger has something to do with attitude, and we're going to talk about that here in a moment. But the first part today is about why swag is necessary on the offensive line, okay? Why swag is necessary when you're creating an offensive line team unit, okay? I want to take a short moment to just, I don't do a lot of pitches on here, and these are going to be, they look exactly the same, but they're 2 different books. One's Buckeye Rebirth, and one is The Chase. Both are by a guy named Bill Rabinowitz, and I had to double check on his first name, but he did a good job on both of them. And the reason I want to bring up those 2 books, and another good one if you want to get into it by Urban Meyer, ghostwritten by somebody else, is called Above the Line. Talks about his culture and sort of how they came to redo Ohio State football when Urban Meyer came in there. The Chase, so Buckeye Rebirth talks about 2012 season with Urban Meyer when they completely redid Ohio State football in the Urban Meyer image. That was their 12-0 year. I might be screwing up the year. I'm 99% sure it's 2012. The Chase talks about the 2014 season. I had the link to those 2, as well as the link to Above the Line. And why do I bring that up? Because I love Urban Meyer's one of those guys, and I know a lot of coaches preach this. I might just get more content from him. I'm not a Buckeyes fan. I live in the state of Virginia. I can't be an Ohio State fan. I'm not a Buckeyes fan per se, but Urban Meyer talks a lot about being 9 or 10 units strong. okay, depending on what you count as necessarily units. You want your unit to be strong, and he really invests in his position coaches to sort of be head coaches of their room. I listen to the Zach Smith podcast all the time. He talks about zone 6 whereas his receivers, okay? And you're sort of creating this team identity within a team, with your group, and, being strong within your group. So I love those 2 books that really talk about how Urban Meyer did it in depth with his team. And I think it sort of goes along with what I'm going to talk about here, okay? What is swag and why is it needed? Swag, what we talked about before, is sort of this attitude about it, okay? You want this attitude that, hey, I'm an offensive lineman and I'm proud to be one. I'm excited to be on the offensive line. Guys, I coach in small schools. The biggest I have dealt with high school-wise, when I was a kid, my high school, who I would later coach for, had about 750 kids in it. By the time I got to coach in it, it's now at like 550. The school I'm going to coach at next year has 375 in it. Okay, you know what ends up happening with offensive line a lot of times? We're having to go and find guys who aren't prototypical offensive line size. And we're going to have to convince them to play offensive line. And so for the, you're doing a recruiting job. I want to do a video that doesn't pertain necessarily to offensive line based on how you can recruit the hallways and how we did it. When I was at Chatham High School, we went from 40 kids in camp my first year to 80 kids in camp my last year there. And how we were able to do that. We had 80 kids coming off a 1-9 season. Like, that was amazing. And I want to do a video on that. But within the offensive line realm, okay, I think number one, it's your most important position to recruit because you need 5 of them. And you need them to be able to work together. So for me, not only do you need 5 offensive linemen, you really need 7 that can go. And then you need another 5 backups probably. And some of you guys at bigger schools are probably going, I have 40 offensive linemen. My head coach was an offensive line coach at a 2A juggernaut in Virginia, and said his last day of spring practice, they had 40 offensive linemen out there, grades 9 through 12. That is nuts. But I like it because it creates a culture. So you're dealing with not the prototypical size issue. And why is this not prototypical size issue a problem in small high school football? Number one, I'm getting kids who probably didn't grow up thinking they were going to be offensive linemen. Now they have to be offensive linemen. I was a center and I was a guard at 150 pounds in 9th grade. I wanted to be a wide receiver, defensive end. I was lankier. That's what I wanted to be. What happened? Oh, I was too darn slow. So I got put on the offensive line, and, story goes from there. I kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger and stronger and developed, but we're having to deal with non-prototypical guys. That's an issue because the non-prototypical guys, you want to recruit more kids who want to come out there. I want to get big boys. I can't tell you how many times I was very blessed at Buckingham because I think I tell people this at Buckingham County, Virginia, everybody's bigger. I'm the smallest one in my family. I'm a pretty big guy. I'm about 6'2", 250. Smallest male in my family, I should say. I'm a pretty big guy. And we breed, 1 year for the 2A level, we had our smallest offensive lineman was 280. My brother played center for us at like 320, and another guy on the line with him was like 330, 340. I mean, we just were used to that. Smaller schools, when I got to Chatham, my biggest guy might have been like 220, 230. So you're having that issue of not finding the right size guys, so you're going to have to convince them to play offensive line and to play it with passion. Because if you show up and you don't put any passion into learning your position, or any passion into showing up each day to practice to get better, you're gonna not be very good. And then also you want to recruit more guys. So your bigger guys, your guys in the 300s, guys who I would call big country type athletes, come out there and play for you. A great story for us, a kid we had who came in ninth grade and never played football at Chatham. He got nicknamed by my offensive line coach then 317 because my O-line coach couldn't remember the kid's name. All he could remember was weight on the physical was 317 pounds. So 317 ended up playing 4 years of football for us, was the first all-star, state all-star in Chatham. Chatham had in like 15 years. And, he cut himself down to about 260. It was lean, mean pulling guard for us. I love that kid to death, kid named Caleb Oaks. But we get him out because he wants to play football. You're trying to get those types of kids out if you're a smaller school. Number two, you got to get the kids excited. Once you get kids out and you deal with the small size problem, you got to get kids excited. How do you get 150-pound me in ninth grade excited to go out and play offensive line? How do you get, guys who dreamed of catching touchdown passes or running the ball? Everybody knows about their offensive linemen who think they're fullbacks, think they need to run the ball. How do you get them excited when you're not going to have stats, when you're not going to have your name in the newspaper generally, when you're not going to do all that type of stuff? And I'm going to talk about that and stuff you can do. You're not getting the attention. Everybody fawns over the running back. Everybody fawns over the quarterback. How do you solve that problem? And finally, offensive line is the toughest job on the field. All 5 units on the offensive line have to move in cohesion. Otherwise, the play is going to fail. And so many times people forget that it is the toughest job on the field. And you're laboring where nobody can notice you. And you don't have the instant gratification feedback. If a running back makes a big play and scores a touchdown, he's got the fans cheering. He's got everybody instantly knowing he did something. Occasionally, I might see a guard pull and kick out somebody perfectly, but 99% of the time, I'm having to see good blocks by going back to the film or by being the coach up in the sky. You're having to convince teenage kids who nowadays are all about the swag, all about, look at me. We're in an attention-getting culture, guys, and we're trying to convince our guys to be the toughest people in sports and be an offensive lineman. How do you do that? And you're not pulling out 5 300-pound, 5-star, going to Alabama or Clemson or Georgia or LSU type kids at your school. If you're like me, you're sitting there dealing with the 180-pound kid who will never play offensive lineman in college. How do I get him excited for his position? So we're going to talk about that in a multitude of ways. 2 parts to follow this. Tonight, I just want to explain why swag is needed. You need that swag to get that offensive line group up, to get them excited to play. I think people miss a lot of times that motivation, that intrinsic motivation every day, sort of give you an attitude about yourself. I love developing an attitude on the offensive line. So for our next video, we're going to be talking about something called creating a team identity or a unit identity, like I talked about with Urban Meyer's book on the chase. How do we create a unit identity with some good ideas for you? In part 3, we're going to talk about both creating an attitude and then how do you recruit the offensive lineman and how do you sell that team identity, that attitude, and how do you develop them and how do you coach them? Part 3 could really be broken down into 2 videos. This one, I just sort of wanted to get the bug into your ear, why swag is needed. And I think swag is almost a bad word in some cultures. It might be a bad word in the old school offensive line culture, but I think it's needed. I used to think all the time I don't want my kids to have I'll say it this way. I didn't want my kids to be cocky at all. I didn't want my kids really. I was one of those guys who played with no self-confidence. Okay. Everything I needed, every play, I needed the coach to tell me I did well or I didn't do well because I was so nervous. I was so nervous about messing up a shotgun snap for 2 years of my life. I would go to sleep on Thursday nights just scared out of my mind. Not on how I would block, but on a shotgun snap. My first game of my varsity high school career as a starting center, I looked in between my legs every snap, and the nose guard chopped my neck every play. The next day, we had a recruiting visit. Me, my dad, and a family friend of ours were going down to Duke University, and I had to ride like this the whole way, just I got my neck chopped the whole way. Got my neck chopped all the time, night before. How do you develop confidence in your kids? I want, the swag to me is that confidence, that attitude, that I know I'm going to whoop your ass. That's what I want to develop on all 5 of my offensive linemen. A confidence in what we're teaching you, who you are, and who you are as an individual and who you are as a unit. That is the swag we're talking about. And our goal in this video series is to teach you how to give it to your offensive lineman. Okay? Because we all know we want to score big, guys. We want to score big, and to do that, you got to dominate the trenches. And to do that, you got to realize and you got to know that bigs rule the world. I'll see you next time for part 2, coaches.